I want you to picture yourself at the scene of a tragic car accident. The victim of the car accident is a family member, someone you hold and love closely. You notice your family member is bleeding profusely from an extremity, moments away from dying. Given the right tools and right skills, would you be able to save your family member's life? The purpose of my speech today is to introduce to you a life-saving piece of equipment that is used on a regular basis to control hemorrhaging and ultimately save the life from victims of car accidents, gunshots, and traumatic injuries. My name is Stephen Longoria, and I am an active duty Army combat medic. I have numerous years in the medical field. I have about 2 years experience active duty military. As a combat medic, I use this piece of equipment on a regular basis, both in the field and in training, to teach soldiers how to save lives. Now, the piece of equipment that we're going to be displaying today is the Combat Application Tourniquet. We're going to go over what is a combat application tourniquet, what it does, when to use and not to use your combat application tourniquet, and ultimately how to use it successfully. To start, I'm going to introduce to you the CAT tourniquet, Combat Application Tourniquet. The purpose of a combat application tourniquet is to stop bleeding, control major hemorrhaging in any of your extremities, whether it be your arms or legs. According to the U.S. Army's Institute of Surgical Research, the CAT tourniquet is 100% effective in occluding blood flow and controlling massive hemorrhaging. The CAT tourniquet, the CAT tourniquet is simply a one-sided Velcro, one smooth-sided piece of equipment with a friction adapter similar to a belt loop that allows you to wrap around an extremity of an accident victim, or a casualty as you can call it. The combat application tourniquet is used whenever a casualty is bleeding profusely from a traumatic fall, a traumatic injury, or a gunshot wound. Now, the combat application tourniquet can only be used on an extremity, whether it be your two arms or your legs. So I have this visual aid here where to apply a CAT tourniquet. Now, excuse my drawing here, but the 4 X's indicate where a combat application tourniquet can be applied, whether it's at the top of the arms or the top of the legs, just above the thigh and the groin area. So the 2 rules of applying a combat tourniquet are high and tight, which means you want to place the tourniquet as high as you can above the wound to make sure that you include the blood flow fully. Secondly, you always want to place a tourniquet between the injury and your heart. Your heart pumps your blood. If you have an injury in your upper left arm, you don't want to place a tourniquet below that. You want to place it above the injury, in between the heart, to prevent blood flow to that injury and ultimately stop bleeding or stop the patient from going into shock due to bleeding. How to use the CAT tourniquet? So, with the CAT, as I stated before, you have a friction adapter which holds it in place. So if you insert the red tab of the combat application tourniquet and you place the smooth portion of the combat application tourniquet above the extremity or wound, you then pull the combat application tourniquet as tight as you can and wrap the Velcro all the way around. Then you can use your windlass rod to tighten the combat application tourniquet. Once you have tightened the tourniquet to the full amount, you then secure it with its securing measuring unit here. The way to assure that a combat application tourniquet is applied properly is to check for distal radial pulse and also to assess bleeding. You will notice that the bright red bleeding will then stop once the combat application tourniquet is applied properly. Keep in mind, if you move your patient, to reassess your combat application tourniquet and use whatever means you have, whether it be tape or wrap, anything you can to put around it to help secure the combat application tourniquet. Now, the purpose today was to introduce you to the combat application tourniquet. I wanted you to understand how it can save lives and how easy of a tool it can be to use in order to save a life, and also when to use a CAT tourniquet and how to use a CAT tourniquet. The CAT tourniquet plays a very important role in, of course, my profession being an Army combat medic. It is stated in the Army Institute of Surgical Research that a casualty can bleed out in between 3 to 5 minutes. With that being said, if a casualty, a family member, a friend has massive hemorrhaging, you have 3 to 5 minutes to save that person's life. The CAT tourniquet has a 96% success rate when it comes to saving lives on the battlefield. Now, with that being said, that's a tremendous number. Now, if you're in the civilian sector and you have a tragic accident occur, the chances of survival are a lot more likely than if you were in a battle zone. So I want you to keep that in mind when using this piece of equipment, that ultimately it's a guaranteed life-saving tool as long as it's used properly. So that's why it plays a big role in my profession as well as my personal life. Brothers of mine have been saved using this piece of equipment. So if I want you to take away anything from this speech, it's how important this piece of equipment can be used can be used to save lives when used properly. And one thing I would like you to consider is yourself in a personal situation. If you needed to save a family member or friend's life, would you be able to do so given the right equipment? I want to thank you very much for listening, and I want you to have a great day.